I am what could fairly be described as a history nerd, dating all the way back to my days in elementary school. My fifth grade report card, which I still have, notes straight A's in history and geography. My interest in and passion for history has continued through my adult life. But it did lead to a difficult to answer question when I was in college. Early in my sophomore year, when I announced to my parents my decision to switch majors from math to government and history, my mom's response was, "What do you do with that?" And frankly, I was not quite sure. I just knew that I was highly motivated to pursue this major in history. Math, not so much. Over the years, I've come to view history differently than I did in the beginning. It is more than autocrats and astronauts, explorers and entrepreneurs, presidents and prime ministers. The tapestry of history is woven with threads from everyone living that history. The UUCCI tapestry of our living tradition began over 50 years ago. Hundreds have contributed to our tapestry with their life experiences, their knowledge, their levels of involvement, and by their very presence. These threads, these personal histories that connect us to UUCCI are different for all of us. For Judy and me, our personal history with UUCCI began with Mary Glasson. We were attending a Democratic Party function in the fall of 2004 and asked some friends about UUCCI. They did not know much, but said that we really needed to talk to Mary, who was present that evening. We did, and in short order, she convinced us that we had to check out UUCCI. Mary could be very convincing, but with a very light-handed touch. Judy attended first and was impressed by the friendly reception she received, and in particular, the welcome from Barry Kastner. I attended the next Sunday, and the rest, dare I use the word, is history. That history has included time on the board, service on various committees and teams, numerous events, First Fridays, who can forget the chili cook-off, special occasions such as the 50-15 celebration, Judy's experience on the Ministerial Search Committee, and of course, my time as a worship associate. The UUCCI tapestry is rich with the contributions from those past and present, but remains a work in progress as we weave our personal threads into an exciting history yet to be written. Our first reading this morning is a meeting announcement from the Long Range Planning Committee. A special UU Fellowship members meeting is announced, hosted by Long Range Planning Committee. When? Sunday, October 19th, 1997. Time, 10 o'clock a.m. to 12 noon. Where? In the sanctuary. Purpose: to share information, to dialogue about pros and cons of growth, to summarize findings of congregations' response cards concerning Barry's talk, to share success stories of UU congregations who have chosen growth. And finally, and I would note this is in all caps and bolded, to take a formal vote on member willingness to grow and commit financially.
To Be of Use by Marge Piercy. The people I love the best jump into the work head first, without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element. The black sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck for what has to be done to move things forward again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fires be put out. The work of the world is common as mud, botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust, but the things worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident, Greek amphoras for wine and oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. I can't express the gratitude I feel in my heart to stand before you now, COVID-free, and while not exactly free, still particles, as anyone who receives COVID stays with them for a long time, but not contagious and not in quarantine, and that matters. Hattie and I wish to thank you again for your care and concern, your love and support through these past 2 weeks that have been scary, stressful, and exhausting. But nothing, or should I say, very few things, could keep me away from being in person with you and live with all of you at home 2 weeks in a row, especially as we are here in this important week today. Last week and this week, these were two important Sundays. You see, last week was our annual meeting and our 54th annual meeting Sunday, to be exact. And what a great Sunday it was. Wonderful music, time together online and in person, and a congregational meeting that may have broke a world record or two for timeliness. Thank you to all of you who stayed, who participated in person and online, and participated in our democratic process as a self-governed community. Of the many important things that were shared at our annual meeting, the 2022 budget was presented and approved by the members of this congregation. In no uncertain terms, this vote was an act of love. It was a celebration of our past, an affirmation of our present, and a declaration of our future hopes as a community. Which brings us to today, to this Sunday, more specifically to our annual Generosity Sunday, the Sunday after the annual meeting, in which we harness all of our gifts and pledge ourselves anew to this community we love. Over the next few weeks, the UUCCI Board of Trustees is hoping every one of us, each of us, will make a pledge to support our operating and capital goals for 2022. We have set the goals, and now it is up to all of us to meet those goals, to surpass those goals, to say we are all in together. In 2022, it will be all of us together, shaping another year of our lives in this community. For these goals to be met, for that future to be shaped, a question emerges. What tools will help us moving forward? Our theme this month is holding history, and because of this, I would suggest we look to our history for the tools that will assist us today and into the future. Call these historic tools, not outdated tools, but historic tools that are timeless in their value and impact. There are 4 tools in particular I want to share with you this morning, 4 tools that emerged in my amateur analysis of the first 30 years of your history, of our history as a community. I hope in sharing these 4 stories, these 4 tools, you are able to see the importance these tools can play in our community moving forward into 2022, and by extension, the value that you each place in supporting this congregation. Let us begin by going back to our first year as a congregation, way back in 1967. Now, for those who have been around for a little bit, or if you attended the 50th anniversary celebration a few years ago, you may recall that 1967 was actually the second attempt to start a Unitarian Universalist lay-led fellowship here in Columbus. The first attempt ended in tragedy when on July 8th, 1964, Ava and Jim Daly, along with their son, Peter, died in a car crash while on vacation in upstate New York. According to Mary Lou Orr, who is still with us as a founding member, Ava Daly was, quote, a real mover and shaker, and that she was, quote, filled with enthusiasm, and she was a good organizer. However, after that tragedy in 1964, which made the front page of the newspaper, this fledgling group was devastated, rightly so, and soon disbanded altogether. Which brings us to 1967, when even in the aftermath of death, the life of this congregation, or should I say fellowship, was reborn and took hold for good this time. Mary Lou recalls that Ava left a lot of things started. A lot of pieces were already on the board. And with the help of returning and new leaders, including the late Evelyn Sanborn and her teenage daughter, Donna Coleman, and of course, the late Bill Lyon, the congregation submitted its letter of application to the UUA and became officially on the map on May 1st, 1967. Which brings us to our first historic tool, which is that of resilience. There was an inherent resilience present and nurtured in this group of liberal religious people in the late 1960s. Resilient indeed, as one note in our archives suggested that in 1967, there were but 16 member units, 11 pledging units, and the group held a total of $777 in the bank. A lucky number, but also a resilient statement of the new fellowship blooming in Bartholomew County. Beyond resilience, another tool emerged just a couple years later. You see, the congregation was invited by North Christian Church on the north side on 31 to use rooms in their basement for their early gatherings. A wonderful act of interfaith partnership, before probably that was a term used, was shown to us in our early days, and our relationship continues now a half century later. In 1969, however, the young, resilient fellowship desired a place of their own. And through generosity and forethought, our first building was purchased on April 4th, 1969. Thus, our second historic tool is that of investment. Investment was an essential tool that moved us into a space where we could grow and thrive during that time of our lives together. That investment was a risk. It was an advance placed on the future promise of the fellowship, of this fellowship. And without question, that investment has been paid back 100 times, 1,000 times over. It was through that investment, economical as it was, that the fellowship stretched and reached to imagine what is possible through the creation of space where connections can be made, where love can be shared, and where meaning can be found. So, if you're following along and at home, resilience and investment are two historic tools gathered early in our history. Let's fast forward a bit to 1988. And we find ourselves in another year of significance, 1988. On the one hand, it was a very good year to be born, if I do say so myself, okay? But on the other hand, not a but, and on the other hand, it was a year that the congregation realized another tool available to them. You see, up until that time, for 21 years, the lay-led fellowship was, well, lay-led. We had no official minister of our own in those first 2+ decades of existence. And while the importance of lay leadership would not falter, we decided to hire our first quarter-time minister in 1988. Many ministers have come to speak on Sunday mornings or other times, but hiring the Reverend Roger Birchhausen signaled a new relationship and understanding of ministry for the UUs of that day. So in turn, the third tool we may glean from our history is empowerment. Empowerment, of course, had been present and necessary from the beginning to lay leaders, young and old, new and long-standing in the fellowship. But this type of empowerment was an important step. It was a recognition of the benefits ministers could bring to a community. It was a recognition that of the wisdom and skills that can enhance a lay community along its journey. Without that first step taken in 1988 and the subsequent ministries that followed, it is unclear whether I would be here today serving now as your settled full-time minister. Thus, along with resilience and investment, your empowerment of ministers and professional staff, for that matter, is of historical significance. Finally, our fourth historic tool emerged from my amateur reading of our history back in 1997. I was not there. 25 years ago, 1997. I have to thank UUCCI President Sandra Bolte online or somewhere for digging up this gem of a meeting announcement that Steve shared in our first reading this morning. And if you haven't read Sandra's November Touchstones article, which is in our Touchstones newsletter every month article yet, I really hope you get a chance to, as it is a wonderful reflection from a longtime member who has seen much change along our history. Anyway, so in this reading that Steve shared, the Long Range Planning Committee was to hold a meeting with the purpose stated with the following goals. Quote, to share information, to dialogue about pros and cons of growth, to summarize findings of congregation's response cards concerning Barry's talk, to share successful stories of UU congregations who have chosen growth, and in bold, in caps, to take a formal vote on member willingness to grow and commit financially. Now, this is a quintessential UU meeting, for it shows the intentionality of our democratic process and also the fact that congregations of all sizes will inevitably face these existential forks in the road, critical moments that shape the future trajectory of any given community. Were any of you at this meeting? Linda, maybe Chris, some online maybe. And I saw Barry Castor's name and Mary Lou Orr and Bob Pulley, which I'd love to pick his brain. I can see, anyway, so there was, we could not find the minutes. We were trying to find the minutes for this meeting, but what I believe the outcome was a decision to indeed grow. that it was in the affirmation. There was a statement that, yes, what we have here, or should I say downtown in the 8th Street Church, is good to be shared, is good, and will bring connection, love, and meaning to more people in our wider community if we're willing to share it. Those members and leaders in 1997 affirmed the promise of their future, of our future, and the rest, well, as Steve said, is history. Well, not just history, it actually huge changes unfolded in just those 6 years that followed. The purchase of the land we are now on, the capital campaign to build this beautiful building and landscape our beautiful grounds, the financial growth of raising the operating budget year over year over year, to then be able to support a full-time minister and call the Reverend Dennis McCarty as your settled minister. All of these things would not be possible without the fourth historic tool that was crystallized in the outcome and aftermath of that 1997 meeting hosted by the Long Range Planning Committee. And that historic tool is, of course, commitment. The committee sought your commitment. And through this commitment as a congregation bursting at the seams in a downtown historic church with inadequate space for children and youth, especially nursery age, for other programs for adults and others, and especially for green space, through this commitment, a new vision became possible. And now, 25 years later, would you look at where we are? Literally, look around, look at the faces of people near you or the Zoom screens online. Look at what was possible because of that commitment to growth. Look at what was possible, not just because of a willingness to grow, but of a commitment to give financially, generously, gratuitously to a community with hope and love in their hearts to try to the best of their ability to do good in the world. Many of us, possibly most of us, may not be here today if it wasn't for those good decisions back then. It is because of those leaders and some of you who are still here that you discovered and wielded those historic tools of resilience, investment, empowerment, and commitment that we are here today. Think about those tools: resilience, investment, empowerment, and commitment. And once again, the opportunity is before us to consider the values that will shape our generosity in the coming year. Will our generosity be anxious and scarce? Will it be conditional and marginal? Or will we harness these tools of resilience, investment, empowerment, and commitment and make our generosity confident and abundant, unconditional, and central to our lives and the lives of this community? I do hope that as you are considering what you will financially pledge in 2022, you will remember these tools. You will remember these people who came before you and who sit beside you and who are you here in 2021, and pledge from a deep well of love for this place and for our history and for our future. We need to double down in 2022. So much has been lost during this pandemic. So much has been lost. It is time to build new ways of being the beloved community here in this South Central Indiana area. And it will indeed be all of us together who will make that possibility real in the year to come. Marge Piercy writes, I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals or field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fires be put out. The work of the world is common as mud, she says. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust, but the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry and a person for work that is real. This is the work, the real work before us. This is our pitcher, our world is our pitcher, and there is water now to be carried. Let us be resilient, my friends, harnessing the investments and power that has been handed now to us as leaders of this congregation, and recommit ourselves now to the work of the world, to the work that is real and common and yet oh so important. May we carry that water forward together in love. May it be so, and amen.